What up, Dealy gang? Is Dealy Kamel here. So it's been about a week since the Rush Duel launch, so I wanted to make a little tier list. Now this one was made by another creator in the Rush Duel space, Tomatosaurus, I believe their name is. Yeah, you see their names down here. And yeah, thank you for making this tier list. I'll be sure to chat with them sometime in the near future. So I got King of Games a couple days ago, and I've played just about every meta deck, so like the main ones that are surrounded by characters and have skills. And I would say that I've run into all of the rogue decks. I don't think I've played too many of them, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on how the meta is right now, especially because, you know, I think a lot of people are thinking right now that there are not many options for building decks in Rush Duel. So I wanted to go over, you know, the fact that there are a lot of options and what you should probably consider playing. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to get all the rogue decks out of the way here. So this is a rogue deck. Dragon Sage is a rogue deck. The Dark Dragon that gets 2800, that's a rogue deck. Beetle is a rogue deck. Vault Condor is not a rogue deck. Folder Blitz, I'm gonna say it's a rogue deck just because the Psychic deck list as a whole, like it on its own is a deck. Folder Blitz is a part of that, but I guess the deck is Prima Guitarna, but Folder Blitz is more surrounded around effect damage specifically, right? You being 2000 less than your opponents, being able to proc that minus 1500 several times per duel by, you know, lowering your life points with Prima Guitarna, then you can gain some back. So yeah, it's a pretty cool deck, just kind of, you know, definitely rogue. The Dark Dragon one is cool, gets you a 2800 beater. There's a few of those skill. I think one character has, I think Luke definitely has this one with the Dark Dragon, and then there's the weird Dragon Sage one as well that like gets you some power that way. And then there's some other of the weird 2800 skills. There is actually one for Gavin that's not here, the hermit guy. So you know, again, these decks are all gimmicks that, you know, they do give you the power to out a level 7 or a 2500 attack point monster by using your skill in addition with one of these weaker monsters. And the Blue Falcon formation is also one of those rogue decks. So now let's start talking about some of the big boys. We've got Dragon Casters, tier 1 deck. It's using Seven's Road. It's using Dragius and a bunch of level 4 monsters in there just to turbo these guys out. And yeah, this deck is pretty self-explanatory. You're using the two strongest monsters in the meta right now. Both can just boost. Seven's Road can boost up well above 3000, and Dragius can just straight up clear boards. Straight up. The only thing you don't have with this deck is that your only way to break 2500 attack is with Seven's Road. And with this deck specifically, you don't really have any great options to target a specific monster, so you do just have to hard draw Seven's Road and Dragius. But the thing is, this is a deck where you are just running 3 of both of those guys and probably the likes of Summon Skull and something else. So the idea is that you're going to have a bunch of 2500s to be able to out all your opponent's threats. The only weakness that I would say that this deck really has is that unless you are able to make a double tribute play in one turn, then your board does fall apart pretty quickly when you do run into other decks that can put up, that can clear 2 2500 boards and still maintain a presence on the next turn. And you know, if you don't draw level 7 monsters turn after turn, you are going to be in trouble with this deck. But it just simply overpowers most decks because, you know, they just don't play enough high level monsters and they're just unable to keep up with the power that this deck can put out turn after turn. So this deck is very, very good right now. I wouldn't say it's tier 0 because I think all the tier 1 decks can win against each other to the point where no one deck is so overwhelmingly overpowered. And I think that is a good thing right now. So let's move on. Next, we've got Psychic Aggro. So this is using Dragius and Psychics. And for now, I kind of want to put this deck at the top of tier 2 just because I think Prima Guitarna is a very good monster. However, there are situations in which you can very easily play around Prima Guitarna, right? If you just put one high level monster on the field, not giving them more than a 300 attack point boost, Prima Guitarna will have to crash into that monster. It will not be able to destroy it. And you do not have, if you are in the incorrect situation in this, going up against this deck, you can be in a situation where you have to kill 2 of your own boss monsters simply because your opponent plays around your Prima Guitarna and they only put 1 or 2 monsters on the field, and that's only going to let one of your monsters swing over a high level monster. You know, your other monster being Yugioh is good because it's that 2500 baseline attack and then will also get boosted up by the Prima Guitarna, so you can make some pretty explosive 2-turn OTKs with this deck by boosting your Yugioh up to like +3, like 3400 or 3100 or whatever, and then being able to kill them in 2 direct attacks. However, when you don't get that ideal situation, you are going to be at just a little bit of a disadvantage because you are running Prima Guitarna over Seven's Road, right? Seven's Road just will get over anything. Prima Guitarna sometimes doesn't. So as I'm ranking the other decks, I might move this one up to the bottom of tier 1, but right now I'm going to leave it here as the best tier 2 deck. So on to the deck that I think is truly the best deck in this game, and that's going to be Seven's Road SL, bro. I think this deck is the most powerful deck in the game. I got King of Games with it just because I switched over to it after so long of playing like Prima Guitarna aggro, Dragon Casters, Dragons, Warriors. I was playing everything, and I was always getting beat by 7 SL Road, and this deck is insanely powerful. It basically turns any level 6 spellcaster monster that you have into a 2400 attack point beater, and you've got 3 of those, right? You've got the blue, the water one that mills a card to the graveyard in order to boost up a spellcaster by 200. You've got Torna, which switches anything to defense, and then you've got Seven's Road Witch, which is going to be able to special summon Seven's Road Magician from the hand just by discarding 1 card. So this skill, before turn 4, you get that 2400 boost. Then turn 4 and onward, you get to switcheroo for Seven's Road Magician. And this deck is absolutely insane just because of how many times you can put up that double 2500, double 2400 stat monster board. It's absolutely crazy. You know, the level 6 water spellcaster going up to 2600 just from being, you know, summoned, using its own effect, then using the skill that gets over anything. Then you can bring out Seven's Road. You can search it from your deck. Even if you don't get Seven's Road Witch, you can still use the effect you search with any of the other level 6 spellcasters. So I think that is what makes this deck just so insane, right? You've got your Seven's Road, which is already your out to everything, but then you've also got like 7 more targets for the skill, depending on how many copies you decide to play of each, to just get 2 crazy monsters on the board. And Seven's Road Witch goes up to 2800 if you use the skill on it, along with the boost it gets from using its effect to summon Seven's Road Magician. So this skill is absolutely insane. I definitely think this is the most overpowered skill in Rush Duel. I think it's going to get nerfed, but right now I think it's the best deck, and it is most likely the best deck for free-to-play players to try to build, because the only box you are that you're going to need 3 of is Seven's Road Magician. Having Currybot as well is nice, but right now, free-to-play players, I think this is the best deck for you to go into, and I think it's the best deck in the meta right now. Okay, so moving on. I guess to talk about dragons, I will put up Dragonic Slayer, since the deck really revolves around him and Piercing Bunker Dragon. So let's talk about dragons. I played this deck pretty much from bronze to gold 2, I think, or bronze to gold 1, and I enjoyed it a lot. It uses the Dragon's Resonance, or Dragonic Resonance, whatever it is called. It just allows you to boost up 2 dragons on your field when you have a level 5 or higher Earth Dragon on the field. And now we've got access to some more of those. So we've got Gravity Press Dragon, the SR. We've got Dragonic Slayer, which destroys a spell or trap. And then we got Bunker Piercing Strike Dragon, which will just stack the top 3 cards of your deck, which is awesome. So we've got some good targets for this deck. Basically, it will make one of these 2300 attack point monsters 2800, so that you can swing over a Yugioh, essentially is what you're going to be doing for most of these, right? How do I feel about the deck? I think it has a lot of good options in the 1 tribute area. Like I said, Gravity Press Dragon, really good for dealing with bigger monsters. You know, can pretty much deal with every single level 7 monster in addition with the skill, because it itself is a target for Dragonic Resonance. It becomes a 2000 beater. Where does the deck fall off, though? I do think that it falls off in the sense that you can run out of cards very, very easily, right? The deck also has a card called Dragonic Pressure, which requires you to send 3 dragons from your hand to the graveyard to destroy all monsters on the field. Very, very good spell. However, I think it does make the big power play with this skill. It does leave you pretty vulnerable, right? It does put you in a situation where you are only going to end the turn with 1 boss monster at most. If you don't know the Dragonic Impact, I think that's the name of the card, the spell card. You know, the key play is that you want to summon a sports dragon afterwards to then summon the other sports dragon from the graveyard. Now you have 2 monsters on the field, and now you make a 2 tribute summon with the last card in your hand. So that being the big backup play behind this deck, I do believe that it leaves you quite open. Most decks on their retaliation turn will be able to take care of 1 Dragius. As long as they open 1 level 7 monster, they should be able to take care of 1 Dragius. And if you are not running, you know, a lot of copies of high level monsters in this deck, I feel like you're going to get punished pretty quickly, because once you run through something like your Dragius and it gets destroyed after you make a play like off of Dragonic Impact, your follow-up plays are not always as strong, right? Your follow-up plays are really strong when you are able to make Dragonic Slayer plus another 1 or 2 dragons that are going to be around 2000 attack points. And you know, I think that the card combo for this deck is, it requires too many cards in one hand to be one of the better tier 1 decks. The deck is still very strong, but I think that this is definitely where it falls short of you know, some of these caster decks, especially, right? Just because every turn you either have the possibility to make Seven's Road or Dragius, and you're going to be able to clear your opponent's big threat monster no matter what. Dragonic Slayer, this is not always the case. In your worst case scenario, you can get just 1 monster that's going to be 2300 base, go up to 23,800, and then go back to 2300 and get run over the next turn. And I've found myself in those situations quite a bit. So right now, dragons don't have a super OP skill. I think maybe, I can't decide maybe if it's going to be a better monster that we get or a better skill, but I think this deck is just a little bit behind the aggro archetypes right now. But other than that, I think it's the strongest deck that's not aggro or Seven's Road. So that is how I'm feeling about Dragonic Resonance. Okay, now let's talk Psychics. Now Psychics, I'm gonna place them maybe at the top of tier 3. I'm thinking right now. I just haven't seen things come together too much for this deck. Psychics is a deck that loses really hard to back row removal, since they've got the best trap that is not generic in their archetype right now. They've got the plus 500 psychic spell card, trap card, and then they've also got a life point boost trap card as well. So this deck does lose pretty hard to back row removal. You know, hammer crush, hammer striking, or whatever. Their boost trap is going to be really, really devastating, especially because Prima Gatarna and Folder Blitz both do depend on you being able to resolve those trap cards when your opponent swings into them. So this deck is really weak to back row, and in most turns, I want to say in most cases, your best play is going to be get Folder Blitz and Prima Gatarna on the field at the same time and try to run down your opponent as quickly as possible. But I think that the other parts of the deck are, I want to say they're just not as strong as most other decks strategies. And you know, that being said, most other deck strategies are just summon 1500 beaters and run over you. And Psychics do have, you know, they have Berry Basis, they have Lullabind, they have things within the deck to get around, you know, kind of these mid-level threats, right? Lullabind being able to flip, just straight up flip anything if you have 2 Psychics is also very strong. However, right, turn after turn, I do feel like this deck will run out of steam compared to those other decks. You know, you wanting to set cards to get them out of your hand when you can't use them, your opponent hammer striking them before you can really get your power spells and traps off that are really going to help you in matchups, I think is an issue that this deck will have. And if it were to get better, then Hammer Strike would definitely move up in the meta. So I don't think that this deck can ever really be, right now in its current state, above tier 2. Right now we'll leave it at tier 3, and if we need to move it around, we shall move it around. Okay, Yami Ruler and Warriors. Dude, honestly, I kind of want to put Yami Ruler in tier 1. Yami Ruler Control. I feel like this deck is just so powerful. It's probably the top performing tournament deck right now. I got to gold 5 with it, and then I switched to Dragon Casters. If you draw well with this deck, I want to say it's like literally one of the most, it's the most impressive deck, and it's really hard to come back from a game in which your opponent has 2 very good back-to-back turns, right? And of course the power play with this deck is summoning your Yami Ruler, switching it to defense for its effect, and either switching it back to attack using Nandes the Fire Warrior, or you can leave it in attack, use the spell card with Gakuto's level up rewards to switch it to defense, draw a card, and then you can switch it back to attack using its effect, and then you can still get to attack with it. So those are the 2 power plays with this deck that allow you to shut down your opponent, not let them summon anything on the following turn. And then if you do see Kami Ruler on the next turn, able to make that 2500 attack point direct attack, because likely your opponent has just set a bunch of monsters on the field because they know they cannot summon level 7s on this turn. So there's plenty of ways to play around your opponent. The skill, this is probably the second best skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. In Rush Duel, it might be the best skill, right? Dark Arts of Celerity is insane. All you have to do is make even a single tribute summon of an Earth Warrior, and dude, you're good to go. You can switch anything on your opponent's field to defense position, and that is crazy. This allows you to you can deal with boards that have 3 level 7 monsters sometimes. Even, I don't know how you're going to get a board, you're supposed to get a board like that, but you can completely board wipe super powerful monsters with this deck. Yami Ruler and Kami Ruler. For one, this deck has 2 2500 attack point monsters in it, and Umugushi the Warrior, the level 6, has an insane effect, right? There just has to be a face-up defense position monster on the field. Another monster gets minus 500. At the end of the day, sometimes it doesn't come into play too much, because it's not a minus 700 decrease like Gravity Press Dragon is, but it will still allow your level 8 monsters to just swing over everything. You know, you won't have to worry about trading with Dragius or trading with Summon Skull, things of that nature. You just lower them down, switch them to defense with Dark Arts of Celerity, and you are done. You're over pretty much any board your opponent can establish. The one deck that really does counter this deck is for sure the Spellcaster deck. No other deck in this game, I'm pretty sure, right now has access to special summoning like this. The Aqua deck has it in Mimi's deck, but I don't know if we're going to get that card. But yeah, special summoning is not limited by Yami Ruler's effect. So 7's Road Witch, special summoning 7's Road Magician. This is probably the main reason why I switched to Spellcasters, just because that play, being able to counter this deck, is like so crazy, right? So the counter deck for the meta does have one counter, and that is 7's Road SL. So that's another reason why I do think SL is the top of tier 1. And Yami Ruler, I think I will sit with it now at the bottom of tier 1, just because it is the anti-meta. You could call it the anti-meta or the counter deck right now. And I think it is the best out of all of these decks. And I think that it can beat every single other deck that is here right now. For sure. I think it can beat every other deck. All right. So that's Yami Ruler. All right. Noodle Pyro. Dude, this deck, I was going to put it in rogue deck, but this deck is actually pretty good, man. This guy gets a pretty big boost from just having normal monsters in your graveyard. So that is like absolutely like a very good generic boost that, you know, you're not just getting anywhere else. Normal monsters in your graveyard times 100, and its effect is a mill effect, right? It's not a discard effect, so that is really, really good. And the whole Pyro spellcaster type archetype here, I think it's interesting. I don't think that, you know, it was the most supported, obviously, because like there's no direct character. I think they have like the NPC who has like the noodle cards or whatever. So yeah, I think this deck is pretty interesting. You can also boost Folder Blitz up with it. I don't know, man. It seems like a very one-dimensional deck. I don't think it's just I just don't think that you have the utility that the other decks have to just consistently win against them. Folder Blitz and Spice both become pretty big monsters after their boost, but I don't know. This deck just really doesn't have it all coming together right now. It's just like boost one mediocre monster, and that's kind of it. So bottom of tier 3 is where it sits for me right now. Actually, it might not do, because I think Volt Condor, dude, might be one of these really lower end tier 3 decks. I think it might actually be worse than the Noodle deck. Don't get me wrong, man. The structure deck is a really good deal, and the cards that you get from within it are very good. However, you know, I don't think I lost a single game to Volt Condor in gold, man. I think that the other decks right now, they just gain way too much value, and Volt Condor does have to discard a card for his effect, although the skill does allow you to get a light monster back to your hand for it. I just really... This deck has some pretty explosive moments when you are going up against a deck with light-based boss monsters, like in the event that, you know, you do only have Dragius, or you are like really crutching on it and, you know, building your board around it, and your opponent plays Lightning Volt Condor into you and you get absolutely shreked for it. I don't like how, you know, it really falls apart for you after your first big push with this deck, because I really don't feel like you have too many mid-range options, right? A lot of the other decks in this game, they have a lot of good one tribute options that can take out boss monsters and just really get rid of them, and leveling the playing fields without you having to blow all of your resources. I don't think Volt Condor has like any of that. I think it has like a few strategies, but you know, really you're just going around Volt Condor and Darkness Crested Hawk, and you're wanting to make something light so you can proc those two effects, but pretty much the rest of the deck is not really doing that for you. Of course, you know, you do have Torna, right? The skill is pretty lenient because it does allow you to include Winged Beasts and Spellcasters. If it were like any other skill, right, that kind of limited you to just one type, this deck would be absolutely terrible. But because you can play Torna within the deck, it does give you some more, you know, mid-range options to kind of take out something like a defense Seven's Road or a defense Dragius. But I don't know, this deck just really hasn't been too competent in my play experience. I always am able to come back from just off of straight up card advantage because these monsters are so weak on the following turn, right? 2100, it's the same attack as Seven's Road on its own, but I just don't think that you get enough from the... How should I say this? I don't think you get enough from just the standard game state, like playing this deck. Like, you have 2 power plays, and once they're done, that's it. You can hope you can get the same value off of Darkness Crested Hawk, but you know, a lot of the times you don't. You're just getting 1000 attack. You're beating over one monster. That's it. You really do need Volt Condor to weaken your opponent's entire board to really get ahead of them. So I don't know. A deck like this, maybe I'll put it above Noodle Ninja, but you know, if it is the deck that you have access to because you're a free-to-play player, don't feel bad. Go ahead and play it for sure. It's a good deck. Just, you know, you are considerably weaker against all these other decks that do have multiple plays that can break your entire board multiple times over. And, you know, you only have Lightning Volt Condor that can destroy your opponent's entire board. So, yeah. The Pyro Rock deck, dude, I got my ass beat by this so many times on day one. I want to say it's like up here in the rogues. Maybe the beetle one is better, but this deck is really sleeper, man. The damage effect with that spell card for getting, like, it is just ridiculous. I think the deck is called Explosion Drive is what the skill is called. And, you know, when it does pop off, it pops off. But when it doesn't really do much, right? Full Meteor Impact is extremely powerful. It's basically an OTK deck. I like it. It's interesting. Would I play it? I don't know. Maybe I'll make a YouTube video on it because I was getting beat really, really bad by this deck. And, you know, if you don't have, you know, maybe a lot of the stuff for Dragon casters, this deck is not terrible. It's not terrible, but, you know, it's losing matches to a lot of the meta decks. But, you know, Full Meteor Impact destroying all level 6 or higher monsters is really good. That's why I did want to put it at the highest tier of Rogue if I'm not going to tier it, just because it does have a pretty good out to it. All right, next is going to be Legend Search or Legend Archive, whatever the skill is called. And we're going to put this in... The thing is, right, so a deck like this is essentially Dragon casters, right? But you are just playing Summon Skull as your boss monster. So I honestly don't even want to rank this, I think, because I think it's just Dragon casters or any other deck that doesn't play a specific skill that locks you. You are always playing Summon Skull. You are always playing Summon Skull because you're not gonna play Dark Magician as your Legend monster. It's 2 tributes. Why would you tribute 2 monsters when you could 1 for the same thing? So don't even think I'm going to classify this deck. I think I've classified all the decks that it goes into. But, you know, you can use Legend Draw with any of these other aggro decks. Psychic aggro, you can use Legend Draw. Dragon casters, you can use Legend Draw. Freaking Psychics even, you can use Legend Draw if you don't want to use a Psychic skill. So we're not going to put that there. What we are going to put up, though, is Dark Magician. And I also think that this is a rogue deck, man. I don't think that there's enough going for it right now. Running a ton of spells and traps, I think right now is not the way. It's not the way on how to do things. And Dark Magician deck, you know, a lot of those spells and traps, they do require you to have, or I should say the only one, right? Dark Magic Attack is the only Dark Magician spell or trap card right now. So it will require you to have Dark Magician. And, you know, it's kind of weird because the deck kind of revolves more around Dark Magician Girl than it does Dark Magician. So a lot of that power is kind of like, you know, it's not really being picked up on because we don't really have too much other Dark Magician stuff. But in the future, we will. Essentially, the deck goes around building Dark Magician Girl up to a 2500 attack point monster. And so essentially, you'll have 3 Summon Skulls in your deck, 3 2500 attacks. Once you do have Dark Magician in the grave, and then the deck just plays, you know, Torna, Seven's Road, the Spellcaster shenanigans. Now, it is good, but dude, what if you're not able to pitch your Dark Magician, dude? You're 1-of card in a 30-card deck. What if you are not able to get rid of it? So the skill says you can turn 2 onward, reveal Dark Attribute Spellcaster with 1700 or more defense in your hand. Then add 1 Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your deck or graveyard to your hand and send 1 Dark Attribute Spellcaster with that monster type to the graveyard. So all you really have to do is open Dark Magician Girl or Dark Magician. You can't open Torna because their defense is not high enough. It needs to be a Dark Spellcaster, right? Yeah, so you've got 4 shots to make. You've got 4 Summon Skulls in your deck, essentially. No, you still got 3, but you have to activate the skill to send Dark Magician. So all you have to do is draw Dark Magician Girl, and they're going to be Summon Skulls. Pretty interesting, but again, right, you are being capped to only being able to deal with 1 high-level threat at 1 turn, unless you do draw Seven's Road and Dark Magician Girl, or like Dark Magician Girl and Torna. Again, this is another one of the situations where I think your initial power play just requires too much card setup in order to be, you know, really good. I think because a lot of these turns where you don't draw DMG, you're gonna just be setting everything, and you're not really going to be getting the momentum you need unless you draw DMG, right? You're basically just going to be playing weaker spellcasters until you get Dark Magician Girl out on the field. And yeah, another thing about this deck, it does play around the Yami Ruler deck, so maybe that is something that makes it better. But right now, I think it might be better than the Pyro deck, so I think that's where I'm going to put it. So yeah, and dude, I haven't played this control deck yet. I haven't played it, and I haven't really gone up against it, but I assume the game plan is just use Yami Ruler, then lower your, then like, you know, raise your life points so your opponent can't kill you. Seems like a good strategy. I don't know. I really feel like going all in on warriors is the best way to play them. That skill is just like way too ridiculous. And in this deck, you're kind of just relying on stall, right? You're kind of relying on stall. So I haven't seen this deck placed anywhere or do anything really. So I'm gonna put it in rogue tier, man. I don't really know too much about that deck. Maybe you guys can inform me in the comments below. But guys, that's going to be my Rush Duel tier list. Let me know what you think. Just to go over it again really quickly, I think the best decks in the format right now are Spellcasters, Dragoncasters, and Warriors. They each have something different in the meta that straight up dominates other decks. And each of these decks, they probably have the least amount of weaknesses in the game. Besides Yami Ruler being really weak to spellcasters, but they're both tier 1 decks. So yeah, all of these decks, they have the full strength and full power of everything going on in Rush Duel right now, and that's why they're the best. Tier 2, they utilize the best parts of the tier 1 decks, but they just do their jobs a little bit worse, right? Psychic Aggro is very good at buffing up Dragius. It lets you clear boards that can have, you know, just it can clear the most absolutely insane boards in the game right now. However, it's just a little bit less consistent that you're always able to wipe those boards, and your opponent can play around your big power play by just summoning less monsters on their big turn. So that's why it's tier 2. Still very good though. Dragonic Resonance, absolutely insane. It has probably the best back row clear in the game, the best attack debuffs in the game as well, and the best spell card in the entire game as well. So I think it's got a lot going for it, but like I said, you do lose out to some of the better decks because you do get stat checked a lot of the time. Your only 2500 attack point monster is Dragius, and when your opponent has the opportunity to clap back against your big play, your big turn, they will run over your board easily because you only have 3 2500 attack point monsters in your deck. So yeah, that's why that's tier 2. Tier 3, we got Psychics, Lightning Volt, Condor, in Noodle. All of these decks are very good offensively, but on their turns, they fall off super duper hard. And Psychics are really weak to back row control. That being said, decks that don't play back row control are very weak against Psychics because you will just have to eat those plus 500 traps that can really mess you up when you're trying to go for a big play. So Psychics, I think right now they've got some weaknesses in the fact that, you know, maybe they're really back row reliant, but maybe being back row reliant is also really good for decks that don't use Hammer Crush. Volt Condor, nice deck. Has the ability to debuff your opponent like crazy via the skill, but it is just too fragile on its own turn effect. It has the lowest attack points out of any, for any deck, it has the lowest attack points out of their boss monsters, being at 2100 unless you can use the skill. Noodle Ninja is a cool deck, has the best generic boost, I think, with just normal monsters, and you know, you can use those normal monsters pretty well, just being 1500 beat sticks. But I think that's where the power for this deck kind of runs out. The whole deck is just boost, 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 and that's kind of it. You're going to run into some problems eventually against some of the better decks. And all of these rogue decks, man, look, dude, they're cool right now. I don't know why people are playing Beetle as a regular deck. It's a farm deck, dude. Like, I don't think I've ever lost to someone who has been playing the Beetle deck. It's definitely interesting, but there's better stuff out there to play for sure. Dark Magician, just not as good as the other Spellcaster deck. You should definitely be playing Seven's Road SL instead. The Rock Burn deck, Very interesting, man. I think this is probably my favorite rogue deck. So honestly, I'm going to move it up to the top of rogue. I'm probably going to make a video playing this deck just because I think it has the most unique strategy out of every deck on this list right now. So, and you know, maybe I'm just riding its meat really hard, but I don't know. It's pretty good. Stall is stall. Dragon Sage is whatever. The Black Dragon 2800 monster, pretty cool, but you know, that's kind of all your steam right there. So you're gonna run out after you run out of these guys. And Blue Falcon Formation, Folder Blitz there or whatever, dude. So this is gonna be my tier list for the first week of Rush Duels. My hopes going forward is that, you know, with each new box and character, we do get at least 1 or 2 new decks with each one, because just looking at how many decks we got from one box plus characters alone, you know, I'm hoping that this trend continues moving forward, because I think the meta for this game, it needs to evolve, and I would like to see it evolve fast, because this game right now is kind of becoming pretty, you know, like you can kind of see everything happening before it happens. You know, everyone's game is like really predictable right now, so I would like to see some other strategies, or maybe some more support cards for other strategies be added to the meta, hopefully with the next box. We're going to be getting Mimi with Aquas, so that's going to make the Don Keto deck a lot better. It's going to make it, you know, just give it the tools it needs to compete against these other decks. Where it places, we'll have to see. But as for right now, this is going to be my tier list for Rush Duels in dueling. So guys, please let me know what you think. Did you think I got anything wrong? Did you find any deck that was really weak to be really strong? Any strong decks to be really weak? What are you playing right now? And where is your favorite deck on the tier list? Let me know, guys. Peace out. I'll talk to you later.